Now we are going to take a deeper dive into universal design for learning. It is complicated. There are several layers to it. So let's get started. Universal design for learning engages three networks in the brain. The first network is engagement. This stimulates the student's motivation and eagerness to participate. The next network in the brain we want to engage is representation. How the material, concepts, ideas, information is represented to the student. How the content is represented. The third network is action and expression. Action and expression deals with language and language acquisition. All the various ways one can express oneself engages that part of the brain. Now we'll go into each of the three networks in more detail. This table summarizes the key concepts and principles associated with each of the networks. The green column is engagement. The purple column is representation, specifically dealing with the curriculum and learning goals. The blue column is action and expression, which focuses on how the student demonstrates their learning. Those three principles are the bedrock of UDL. First, we'll look at engagement in a bit more detail. I realize the print is hard to see on the slide, so I will break it down and explain it. Engagement capitalizes on the affective networks of the brain. These are associated with emotions and relationships. By tapping into the affective networks, we can encourage students' interest to engage in the learning process. Back in my day, back then, the relationship between student and teacher was not considered important at all. It was not nurtured. Society did not expect it. Remember from my earlier lecture when I shared that teachers had closer relationships with parents? Over the years, I have had several confrontations with my daughter. By the way, she has since finished with her university studies and graduated with her B.Ed, and she is now teaching. But when she was in school, she didn't get along with many of her teachers. She refused to do the work for her teachers. She said she didn't like them. She said she didn't respect them, so she wouldn't engage. I would get on her and tell her that it didn't matter how she felt about her teachers. She still had to do her schoolwork. She was stubborn and wouldn't budge. Now she's a teacher herself. She knows the importance of teacher-student relationships, and she has a good relationship with all her students. She turned out to be a good teacher. A good teacher can stimulate students' interest and motivation for learning, tries to build it up at every opportunity. Now let's move on to representation. Representation stimulates the recognition networks and includes materials and resources, the what of learning. If I am teaching a science class about the life cycle of trees, well, it's certainly easy to recognize trees in our environment. This is where we tap into lived experiences, background knowledge, resources such as books, images, and so on. This is recognition. The teacher is responsible for presenting the information and content in multiple ways. You can incorporate drama, writing, reading, presentations, technologies, and so on. There are many creative ways that the content can be presented. Strategic networks are included under representation, the planning and design of how the content will be delivered. What are the approaches and strategies that can be used to represent the content? This is the how of learning. The last network is action and expression. This part of the design focuses on the multiple and flexible ways a student can express their learning. These principles of universal design for learning engages those three primary networks in the brain. Each network is identified by a principle to guide design, development, and delivery of the target content. This is where it begins to get complicated, to get more layered. Each principle contains 3 checkpoints to guide options in your learning design. For engagement, we want to provide multiple means to encourage active participation. The first and most obvious entry point is to explain why the content has relevance to the learner. It's hard to be motivated to learn if the student feels there is no relevance. Another entry point is your design in presenting the content. How can you make it interesting, intriguing? Provide a broad variety of representations. This can also make the topic more interesting. For example, using animation for your first representation, which students may find fun and then move on to other representations. Maybe the content is complex, so you start with doing something rather easy so students don't feel intimidated and are more willing to try. Content could be presented in an auditorially rich fashion. I can imagine a trained actor presenting the content in a more polished way, using interesting vocal effects, modulations, even accents, something the students may find entertaining and unique. Motivation can be enhanced and maintained by giving individual feedback. Often when students are encouraged, they're motivated to continue learning. Providing positive reinforcement and maintaining a positive environment helps students to feel safe and willing to keep trying. So these are some suggestions that can stimulate interest and motivate active engagement in learning for your students. The next principle, representation, looks at how content can be represented in multiple and various ways. This deals with the curriculum, teaching, and learning materials, as well as other resources. Representations can be visual, auditory, textural, can include extra hints, including interactive activities or problem-solving tasks. Design is important for representation. Is it aesthetically pleasing? Symbols can be used, videos too, and material can be represented in sign language, as you can see for yourself. The third principle is action and expression, where we provide options for the learner to express what they know in multiple ways. Examples include multiple choice questions, text input, drag and drop exercises, pictures, tactile activities. Perhaps the student physically build something. Seeking and finding activities is another idea. Action and expression can also capitalize on listening and speaking. Let's not forget to add sign language to the list. Let's dive a little deeper into the engagement principle. Remember, our engagement strategies try to tap into affective networks of the brain. It's the why of learning. To boost engagement, we should optimize the student's individual choice and autonomy, allowing them to decide what best meets their needs. You'll need to clearly communicate the relevance, authenticity, and value of the content to be learned in order to increase their motivation. How does it connect to their lives? Minimize threats and distractions. Students who do not feel safe are less likely to be engaged in the learning process. If they are trying to avoid bullies, they are not going to be able to attend to the lesson. Distractions will also disrupt their ability to concentrate. Encouragement always helps students to keep at it. Heighten the salience of learning goals and objectives by connecting them to future outcomes or desires. It could be related to employment, a career path, personal interests, or some other performance. It's good to vary demands and vary resources so the students with different abilities feel challenged. Foster collaboration and community. Some students don't thrive learning independently. If they feel connected to others, feel a sense of community, they are more likely to be motivated to learn alongside their peers. It's important for students to see how they have actually progressed. Create opportunities for mastery-oriented feedback to explicitly bring to their attention how far they have come and what's next to continue their growth. Provide support by recognizing students' efforts and successes at self-regulation. Guide them to reflect on their behavior, motivations, as well as their feelings. It's important for them to learn self-control. The better they are at self-control, the more confidence they develop. Then they are more able to attend to their learning. Teachers need to openly demonstrate to students their expectations and beliefs. Teachers' positive expectations do motivate students to do well. Teachers can facilitate students' learning of various coping strategies. If a student fails, respond with and guide them towards a growth mindset. They may need help coping with failure. Students' motivation can be enhanced through reflection and self-assessment. When they take some time to see how far they have come and what's next, it can motivate them to sustain the effort. If your learning design maximizes the engagement principle of UDL and incorporates the various options we just outlined, your student will grow into expert learners. They become purposeful, motivated, and actively engaged in their learning. Now we will look more closely at the representation principle, which focuses on materials and resources. Representation focuses on the what of learning. The students need to access the content through multiple formats, engaging as many senses as possible. This is key. Access can engage students' vision, hearing, touch, physical movement, and so on. So have multiple modalities ready to implement. Offer ways of customizing the display of information. For example, students should be able to resize material on computers, whether it be text or images. They should be able to turn on narration. Content presented in sign language should be given plenty of space on the screen. When students can customize the display of information, they can take control of their learning. Offer alternatives for auditory information. Examples could include students using their personal headphones or earbuds. Teachers could use a headset with a mic to amplify to the entire class. There are several options that can be used to provide auditory information. Offer alternatives for visual information. Examples include video, images, tables, graphs, and so on. Develop your own or provide ready-made options for language and symbols. Now, later we'll discuss language acquisition more fully. The options we're talking about in this form of content representation is not to support language acquisition. In UDL, the assumption is that the student has age-appropriate language skills. It assumes that the child can speak and hear or fluently use sign language. That is an important underlying assumption for UDL. Keep that in mind. So, if the child has age-appropriate language, then it's easy to clarify vocabulary and symbols. The same is true in terms of clarifying syntax and structure, as long as the child understands the language fluently. If the child is language delayed, this does not apply. This can support the child in decoding text, mathematical formula, notation, and symbols. We can promote understanding across languages. I know I am repeating myself, but still, I want to emphasize this should only be done for students who have minimally fluency in an L1. Represent the language, concepts, or resources through various media. Examples could include email, movies, video recordings, writing, and so on. By providing students multiple representations, you maximize their opportunities for comprehension. Activate prior knowledge by asking students what they know about the topic. This will prime them for the new information. Highlight patterns, critical features, big ideas, and relationships embedded in the content. Guide information processing and visualization. This is where you might want to use graphs, tables, or other images. Can the concept being taught be represented in a visual form? Can the student use a computer or websites to read or synthesize the information and deepen the visualization? Guide the students to develop knowledge transfer skills. Help them to identify known concepts to new observations in order to develop generalizations about their learning. If your learning design maximizes the representation principles of UDL and incorporates the various options we just outlined, your students will grow into expert learners. They will become knowledgeable, resourceful, and independent learners. Let's move on to the action and expression principle of UDL. This principle focuses on the how of learning. We're looking to support the students' progress by engaging the modalities they learn best through. How do they learn best? Provide options for physical access. If you're teaching volleyball, you'll need a ball. Vary the methods for response and navigation to your desired learning endpoint. Some students may meander their way there, others may take a direct route, still others may take a widely circuitous route. All are equally valid. Optimize access to tools and assistive technologies. There are any number of them that may support your students' learning, including headphones, tablets, laptops, watches, and so on. Build options for expression and communication. Remember, again, our assumption that a student is already fluent in an L1. We need to be cautious here. Use multimedia for communication. Examples could include filming, websites, email, even good old-fashioned handwritten letters, reading, text, images, drawing, and so on. Use multiple tools for construction and composition. Students can create their product digitally, using a laptop, or manually, using paper and pen, like a poster, or even construct a model. The point is to have multiple tools for them to choose from. Provide as much support as the student needs and gradually decrease it as the student becomes more confident and independent. We call that the zone of proximal development. You can see on the slide the horizontal line is at the top of the vertical axis on the left, where the teacher supplies full support at the beginning of the task. Support tapers off once the student is ready to fly away on their own. Provide opportunities for students to engage the executive functions of their brains. activities where they have to make plans, predict what lies ahead, and problem solve. Tasks such as these activate the executive function region of the brain. Practical ideas include organizing things in the classroom, preparing and delivering announcements, taking leadership roles in planning events, to name a few examples. Students need to be guided to set realistic goals. I had a student who wanted to be a professional football player. I asked if he played football. He said he didn't, but he watched it on TV. All right then. So I asked him if he was running regularly or playing football after school. Nope, he didn't do any of that either. Clearly, it wasn't a realistic goal. We can support their planning and strategy development towards achieving their goals. And if they hit a roadblock, then we help them reset. Through UDL, we facilitate information and manage resources. I am sure we all have endless files. Students, too, may need guidance in managing and organizing their information and school materials. We also need to guide students in their own self-monitoring process. Are they aware of how they're doing? It will help them to understand how to take control of their own learning. If your learning design maximizes the action and expression principle of UDL and incorporates the various options we just outlined, your students will grow into expert learners. They will become strategic and goal-directed. So that summarizes the strategies about how to meet the needs of diverse learners. Successful universal designs for learning require us to be proactive. The focus is on the environment, curriculum, and expected diversity. We seek to identify possible barriers in goals, methods, materials, and assessments so they can be eliminated or minimized. The key ideas underpinning UDL are flexibility and multiple modalities. The means through which we deliver the learning are the principles of representation, expression, and engagement. So that's UDL in a nutshell. It's bigger than a nutshell. Complex and multi-layered. Many factors to consider as you plan. Thank you.